culture is not necessarily about the tribe you belong to. It has a lot to do with ideas and behaviors. It's the way things are done around here. A culture can be toxic or life-giving. Culture often shapes us. Like you go to work at a certain place and you change, consciously or not, according to the way things are done around there. It works both ways. We can also mold culture. In fact, as Christians, we are called to positively influence the culture on our front lines so that others can flourish. Let me share a story about someone in our community. Gerhard is a lecturer in political science at the University of Pretoria. A university is a place not only for studies, but it also has a culture of its own. In academia, the drive for success is strong. There's a lot of pressure to push yourself forward. As a Christian, do you struggle with jostling for positions? Like anyone else, Gerhard wants to be successful. But rather than clamoring to the limelight, is there a better way?
Yes, I think one of the ways in which we can impact the culture of our workplaces is not just in what we do, but in how we do things, right? And as you rightly indicated, there's such pressure to succeed. There's such pressure to be the best, right? And, as Christians, we know that our true identity, our true reward is with the Lord. We don't just have this life in which to make it, right? Our aim in this life is not just to succeed, right, and get to the top, right? That is not our aim, right? Our aim is to live a life of following Him, right? And so in a workplace, that might translate in you at times stepping back and allowing others to follow an opportunity, right? Because I know my reward is in heaven. The fullness of life that I will attain is guaranteed for me in heavenly places, right? So I think that we can, as Christians, easily defer to others, right? And say, no, you go first, rather than just pushing yourself ahead.
What's the antidote for this kind of self-promotional striving? Gerhard believes that humility is the key.
I think the hard part about molding culture is that it sets you up for possible conflict, is to go against the current, right? To be different, right? And so I think to do that effectively needs a great balance of the humility and the gentleness and the love that comes from the fruit of the fruit of the Spirit in us, right? Because having to go against the current with a hard attitude will just make you a pariah quickly, right? But to be countercultural, but with a gentleness and a meekness and a kindness, right? I think that'll be the key, right? To be countercultural and to avoid the conflict that can come from that.
We're not all called to turn down a promotion. In fact, Gerhard believes that God will promote him in due course. However, in order to influence a flawed culture, he felt to act in the opposite spirit. Gerhard exerts an influence on the self-promotional culture of academia by being humble and others-oriented, even when it costs him. Molding culture sounds so daunting. It's the stuff of superheroes for which superhero skill and strength are needed. It is difficult changing a culture. But it is not too difficult to simply make a start. Humility is also a quality that Gerhard embodies when teaching. He believes in first listening, seeking to understand before judging. When he teaches the various worldviews, including those at odds with his own, he does so in a balanced way, modeling the way he'd like his students to engage.
But as a believer, as a follower of Jesus, it also gives me the opportunity to feed into my students, right? Not just a Christian take on things. That's not what I do. I don't present them overtly with a Christian take, but based on a Christian understanding and in a biblical worldview, it offers me the opportunity to do a bit of cultural criticism, right? To critique some of the dominant narratives that we see in the world, some of the prominent secular streams of culture, right? To show that it has blind spots, that there are weaknesses to it, right? And then to also feed in maybe different takes, different understandings to my students. So I trust that I equip my students with a form of intellectual rigor that allows them to look at the world around them and the culture, the secular culture around them, and not just to automatically absorb it, but to have a critical lens through which they look at it, and to also then maybe consider alternatives, right? It is not my job at the university to be a preacher, right? I'm a teacher, right? So I expose my students to the varieties of intellectual paradigms and trends that you find in the world, and to then honestly look at them. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses, right? And in this way to not just create a culture where people just go with the flow and just be conformed to the world, right? But to present them with ways of interrogating that which confronts them, so that they, when they are confronted then with a Christian alternative, right, to recognize its strengths in addressing a lot of the weaknesses that we find in the dominant culture around the world.
Gerhard shows the strengths and blind spots of each worldview. He teaches his students to think critically so that they have a grid with which to evaluate the cultural ideas. In this way, he teaches his students to engage critically and equips them to be thinking individuals in this world.